Today, we are here to talk about the death of Fomo in the Toronto real estate market as we enter into a new era of real estate fatigue. Yes, it's true. And what we're seeing really is a cultural shift from urgency to skepticism and uncertainty. So we're here to talk about if you're a buyer, you're a seller, you're a real estate agent, you like watching the Toronto real estate market for some reason. Well, we're here to tell you how to work with it because we're working in it every single day. My name is Ralph Fox. I'm the co-founder and broker of record of Fox Marin. And today we have an incredible panel. We have my lovely co-founder of Fox Marin, the voice, the heartbeat of Fox Marin, Kori Marin.
Hello.
So glad to have you here, Kori.
Ralph, it's so good to see you. It's been so long.
I know. Next, we have Jessica, aka the Queen of Acquisitions and VP and broker at Fox Marin. Jess, so great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
And our resident heartthrob, Ian Busher, rocking the playoff beard. I think he's about to go on a vacation, so he's just letting it all hang out. Ian is VP as well of sales at Fox Marin. And Ian, it's so great to have you here today as well.
Thanks, Ralph. Nice to be here. Hi, everybody.
Awesome. So this is going to be a really good conversation. I think it's really relevant as we see and have been witnessing significant market shift. How we got here, if we look back from 2020 to 2022, we were in a very low interest rate environment, and we had a huge pandemic-fueled demand. We had rampant immigration, free money, and what that resulted in was blind bidding wars, urgency, panic, FOMO to the umpteenth degree. Very interesting being an active real estate agent during that time period. We went then from 2023 to 2025 into a very high interest rate environment. We saw higher rates, softening prices. We have all kinds of uncertainty coming from the United States and actually coming right here in Canada, having come off a very divisive election, and we have media negativity galore. So very, very interesting time. There's a lot to talk about, from buyer psychology to the fatigue effect that we're seeing. So much happening. I hope I gave a good sort of rundown of what we're seeing in the market. Kori, now that we've kind of set the table here and given a little bit of context to our conversation, Kori, do you have anything you sort of want to add or just bring into the conversation as we start to delve into this?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that you did a really good job opening that up to kind of explain what the sentiment is like and the shift in overall energy. And so we are working in a high velocity market, and now we're working in a market that is a lot more sluggish, a little sloppier, definitely more uncertain and tentative. So I think that comes from all areas of the market and all price points and basically all geographies. It's been a very difficult time to give advice, whether you're working with a seller or you're working with a buyer or you're working with somebody who's moving up the property ladder, for example, because none of us really know what the outcome is going to be. Like, it's actually impossible to predict. Some properties are selling in multiples. Some properties are selling with bully offers. Some buyers are competing with other buyers to acquire a property. And then other buyers are sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what happens, which I can completely appreciate and understand why. And then other buyers are looking at this as a very opportune time and trying to take advantage of the market and looking at perhaps offering significantly under asking on the acquisition side. And then, of course, there's us in the middle that are basically real estate psychologists and therapists working with buyers and sellers alike and trying to just help navigate people through this. Like, people definitely still need to live somewhere. People need to make moves. And it's just a question of figuring out how, what, and why, and working with everyone's personal goals. So it's been challenging, to say the least, but we're seeing a lot of success stories out there, and we're seeing some challenges for people too on all ends of the spectrum.
Awesome. So I think the best way to really break this conversation down is let's put this in 3 buckets.
Okay.
The most important side to start with, because that's really what's driving the shift, is the change in buyer sentiment.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we start talking about buyers, and then we'll move into the reaction to the change in sentiment with buyers. We'll move into sellers. And then from sellers, we'll start talking about us lucky people in the middle that you were referring to earlier, the agents who the comment section of YouTube absolutely loves us. And I'm saying that sarcastically. So let's start out with the buy side. And I'm going to throw this to the queen of acquisitions at Fox Marin, Jessica. Jess, let's talk about the shift in mindset from what we were seeing from 2020 to 2022, and then what we're now seeing in this new environment with higher interest rates and a lot more geopolitical uncertainty. What has the shift been from the sentiment and mindset of buyers?
Where we started at the peak of the market in 2022 was a real fear of missing out of getting your hands on property in general. And so we saw people going through extreme lengths to get a property, whether or not that purchase price made sense. It was very much emotionally driven, and competition was rampant. And I think from a buyer psychology standpoint, people will look for social proof in order to feel good about the decisions that they're making. And it felt like everybody and their mother was purchasing property between 2021 and 2022, which further spurred the wheel. And fast forward to today, there is more trepidation than I have ever seen before, and it seems to be ramping up by the week. And what the types of conversations that I am having with buyers, whether I'm representing them or via their represented agent, is that most purchasers right now have their backs up against the wall, incredibly fearful that they're going to purchase something that might later on become a nightmare situation for them financially, or B, that the market will continue to decline further. And I think when you have that mindset of analysis paralysis, what could go wrong, as opposed to looking at the opportunity in the exact situation, it doesn't allow you to move forward freely. And the biggest disconnect I'm seeing right now is sellers feeling like they're making massive concessions on purchase price in order to meet the expectations of buyers, and buyers still feeling like it's not good enough. And if the property is being listed at a low price, there must be something wrong with it. And they're just looking for every single reason not to buy right now, which is the complete opposite side of the spectrum from what we saw in the market peak spring of 2022, where it was every reason to buy, whether that made sense or not.
I think the greatest words of wisdom were from Fox Marin icon Warren Buffett. Be greedy when people are fearful, and fearful when people are greedy. And you can see the way sentiment and perception drives buyers in real estate, especially residential real estate, because it's not just an investment, it's also very much an emotional purchase. And we see that how emotionally driven these decisions are. And so in actuality, a buyer should have been standing back a little bit when people were feeling greedy. And now is at a time where people should be inversely reacting the way they naturally want to react. And I think when you're seeing a time period like this is actually where all the opportunity is, but people are being so fearful. There's the other aspect to it is we've seen the investors that were help driving up all of this. They basically disappeared. We're not seeing too many investors out there the way we were before. Kori.
I was going to just say, to defend particularly the first-time home buyer, if I was a young person buying my first property right now, would I feel emotionally confident to step into the market right now? And let's say you're more tenured and you're moving up the property ladder and you've had some experience buying and you understand that the market sort of responds to things. There's an ebb and flow and you're over that initial hump. I understand that you could see this as an opportunity for sure. But if this is your first go, I mean, I can really see that it would be scary to think, God, is the market going to correct even more? And am I making a mistake? And I have one shot at doing this and I don't want to screw up. And I also know that if I don't get this property, 123 Main Street, that 124 Main Street's going to be available in another week. So there's no like rush for me to make a decision or jump into something. And I can see why they feel like they have the power on their side of the play. So I could see it being a very nerve-wracking time to make that first move, even though I completely agree there's opportunity out there.
I think one of the things that's really interesting is how the Bank of Mom and Dad factors into this, because if you have your parents either writing the check or just saying, you know what, you've saved up, you've done a great job, but if things get really bad, we're going to support you and make sure if you lose your job that the mortgage is going to get paid. That gives you a lot more confidence than in this environment, which is so uncertain. Ian, I haven't pointed this over at you. I see you nodding your head. Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think if you've got the backing of somebody, a family member, Bank of Mom and Dad, like you said, I think that would help with your confidence level. I think if you as an individual or a young couple have been saving, and you over the last 3 years have been watching prices not plummet, but, kind of come down. Nobody wants that egg on their face of, I bought at the wrong time, I made a bad decision. And further to Jess's point, in 2020, 2021, the beginning of 2022, we would take people out to see 20 properties over a weekend. And by Tuesday, every single one of them was gone. And we could tell them how many offers each one of them had and how much over the asking price it went for. And now I'm having conversations with buyers where for weeks we've gone out to look at, let's say, 6 to 8 properties over a weekend. And by the next weekend, they're all still there. And a couple of them have adjusted their prices and given up on a bidding war. And by the week after, they're still there. But each subsequent week, 8 more have been added to the pile. So after going out with my buyers for, say, a month or 2 months, a conversation, needs to be happening to say, there were properties you liked. Maybe we haven't hit on the exact one yet. But the only way to find someone who's willing to sell you for a price that you'd be willing to pay is to start asking questions rather than just watching, right? All we're doing is looking and then watching and looking and then watching. And then that's where good agents have to come into the conversation to say, I've done elaborate pricing. I've broken this down in this way. If this happens to come down another 5 to 10% over the next 2 years before it starts its trajectory back up, that would be unfortunate, but, long term, which I think we need to come around to, is savvy people thinking long term who can make relatively quick decisions in a super, super saturated marketplace can do very well here. It's just a question of finding that bravery and finding that confidence and finding that agent that's going to help you through this storm. I think there's just so many options for people. It's terrifying. And one thing we haven't talked about, because we've talked all about the real estate side of it, but I think, Kori, you hinted at it, is people aren't just worried about what is this asset that I'm going to pick up going to do, but is my job secure? Are my other investments secure? Are we heading into a recession? What other facets of the economy at large are going to factor into this major purchasing commitment I'm about to make?
100%. I think going back to the Bank of Mom and Dad and parents, I think parents are driving a lot of their kids to buy now because they've seen how well they have done with their real estate investments. And not just financially, but I think morally, we're seeing actually parents grab their kids by the scruff of their necks and be like, we're going to look at properties, because I think they've seen how well they have done over time. And I think they have that foresight that their children don't necessarily
100%.
do,
Yeah.
or the appreciation even of their parents willing to stroke a 20% down payment check or back them up. So I think that's really interesting. I think the story, the disappearance of investors is really interesting right now. And I think that's only compounding the slowdown on the demand side. So I think that's an interesting point of conversation. And I just find it to be a really interesting time overall, how people are looking at it, because I think everybody's looking at it differently. But for me, the major lens is the uncertainty. And until we have certainty, that will really be the first stepping stone to seeing things start to turn around. And that, I think, starts with what happens in the US, and just having some type of an agreement, I think, would go a long way. Having a parliament that is actually sitting and operating, having been off for almost a year, I think would be really helpful. So I think there are things that we can look at. Interest rates starting to come down a little more probably won't happen over the summer, but I do think we'll start to see some movement again back in September. So there are some things that could start to give a little bit more sense of stability and certainty, and I think that's something everybody, not just people looking to buy real estate, but I think everybody day to day is just looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree.
Anyone have anything else they want to talk about regarding buyers, change in sentiment, or who is buying? Because we still have a lot of people out there buying right now. We sort of talked a little bit about the people who are having trouble moving forward, but who is buying? Like Jesse and you both have done recent transactions where we've had buyers at all different price points. Like who is buying and why are they buying?
I'm seeing more and more first-time buyers starting to think about coming back to the table, although it is very difficult for them to pull the trigger on something. I think they're stagnated by the number of options available and seeing that these properties are not flipping from for sale to sold quick enough. It completely eliminates the sense of urgency. And I don't blame them for always asking, what if? Is there something better that's going to come along? And I typically urge people to lean into their ability to take their time and be as picky as possible if you're not under duress. But at the same time, when you see a good opportunity, you don't want to underestimate its potential or overestimate it, and really scrutinizing it and identifying the long-term potential of that property. And then the other thing that I'm seeing from buyer pool is those that just are going through life changes. So getting married, downsizing,
Divorcing.
Yeah. So I would say probably the life changes is the more prevalent buyer pool right now. But slowly there's a trickle of first-time buyers that are starting to think about the current climate as an opportunity to enter, but they're coming into it with a lot of entitlement and expectations that they can get a lot more than what the market is currently showing them they can achieve.
Ian?
Kori, you had your hand up before I speak.
Sorry, Kori.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just going to say, I also feel like there's a very different buyer for a condo versus the low rise. And so we've been hosting so many open houses in low rise properties right now. And every weekend that we've been hosting them, I expect it to be very slow because I'm like, no one's buying right now. And why would they? This is sort of like what I'm thinking. And then we open the doors on a Saturday and the open house has 40, 50, 60 attendees at it for a property, let's say, priced between 1.5 million and 2 million. And the demographic has been young couples in their 30s, walking around the house with like no trepidation about buying real estate or Toronto or Canada's future or the economy or tariffs. And they're like completely focused on, does this property fit my lifestyle goals? We're planning on having a baby. I have a dog. We have a car. And this aesthetically looks amazing. And we know this school district is good. So that's like one profile for that low-rise shopper that perhaps might have at one point had a lot of equity in their condo and been able to sell it for like probably a little bit less than they could have and are able to make that next move and or have been able to stay with parents for a significant period of time to save deposit and or had bank of mom and dad. But then the condo purchaser is certainly 100%, I think, the more nervous buyer, understandably, because the condo asset class has suffered the most during this correction period, if we want to call it that.
And it may be their first time, right?
And maybe their first time. And that is where I 100%, just to go back to circle what Ralph was saying, is where we're seeing the parents, pulling their kids through these properties, whether it be a loft or, a more generic cookie cutter condo, if we can even host an open house at these properties. But just speaking to that demographic pool, a little bit younger. And as Ian just mentioned, a first timer. And I think they are two different segments of the market buying.
Mm-hmm.
Ian.
As the ladies were speaking, I was like, how do I approach this? But I'll just give you the last 5 buyers that I worked with, and they're all different. I don't really have a trend that's going on. I've got a couple in their 50s bought their first home after renting their whole lives, and felt like this was the right time to do it. I've got a gentleman who just moved here for work, and work was giving him a little bit of money to make it happen. So he moved from a different part of Canada to Toronto. So it took him a couple of months, but not because we didn't see opportunity, but because he didn't know where he wanted to be. Who else? Other buyers moving up, both of them professionals in great careers. So they weren't really worried about the economy or what was going on. They're like, we just need better school district, bigger house, family growth, just property ladder type things. Young couple managed to sell their condo. We can talk about that too. So they managed to get out from under, sort of being held in place by a condo that wouldn't sell because they managed to find a buyer privately on their own. So you can see that there isn't a trend of I've got the same cookie cutter formula going on each time.
If you dig a little deeper, you see that there was change in life circumstances that was driving all of these decisions. And it goes back to what we've talked about before is like, yeah, there's this real estate apocalypse according to the Toronto Star, but there were 6,000 some odd transactions in the month of June.
Yeah.
That means there were 6,000 buyers and 6,000 sellers, 12,000 people or families all made real estate decisions during a very challenging time in the market and the economy and the world. And this is something that was such a big lesson that I saw and learned during the pandemic was in the darkest days, like January, lockdown, pandemic, tough condo, low ceilings, second floor, looking into a rabba. We sold it.
Or wrap.
And
I remember.
and the seller had to sell and the buyer needed to buy. And there were all kinds of other factors that were driving those decisions. And so even in challenging markets, there are lifestyle decisions that people are going to make for their long-term benefit. And the real estate aspect just factors into a huge part of the equation. And so I think if you're watching this, no matter what you're reading in the news, we've been through this many, many times before, and people will need to make decisions for the best interest of their lives. And we're just here to help facilitate that.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. People need a place to live.
Yeah. And
Exactly.
the headlines, the doom and gloom headlines, the clickbait just needs to back off. It is all, each one may as well be, you're going to lose all your money and you're going to die. Like that's, I need to know what this is about. I need to know when and where I'm going to die today and how I'm going to lose all my money.
Because my life depends on this. So I'm going to click this.
Yeah.
This is a life and death decision.
Years ago, I think Toronto Life writes articles sometimes specifically for people to get mad, to read it and be like, what? This is ridiculous. And I feel like other publications have started to catch on to this and they're like, put this inflammatory headline up about real estate or the economy or politics. And you're like, I need to know what this is about so that I can talk about this at the water cooler at the office today. And it's all so negative. You open up one of the social media apps and you're there you scroll through 2 or 3 things and maybe it's a result of what else I follow. But basically it's like, yeah, every investment that you've made is going to fail and the world is coming to an end and the world is on fire. And it's like, all right, well, I get back to bed again, I guess. Nothing is good, right?
Well, Ralph,
so that cannot be helping those young first-time condo buyers. I think someone sagely pointed out that the experience of having been through this already and having watched it happen for years, you've already bought property. Maybe you're helping the next generation buy property. Certainly, experience helps here. I'd be terrified too if I was 25.
And actually getting real information, like one of the agents on our team, his wife came to him and said, there were only 49 condos sold in the month of May. What? How's that possible? Those are pre-construction sales, and we all know it's dead. And even that number was a manipulated number. So, there were 6,000 transactions in the month of May, similar to June. So everybody just stop freaking out. People are moving forward with their lives and making the best decisions possible. Yeah. Okay, so we are going to switch. We're going to switch hats. We're going to talk about sellers. Kori, I'm just going to pass the mic right over to you.
Yep.
What are we seeing on the seller side of things in this new environment?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So up until about 3 weeks ago, I was still feeling like the selling side was quite robust if properties were turnkey, they were vacant, they were staged, they were styled, they were marketed properly, and everyone was aligned on expectations. So I've used this phrase before, but the Goldilocks principle, not too high, not too low, just right. And things were still moving quite effortlessly. And I felt like we were moving through quite a few of our listings with confidence. In fact, quite a few of them, including some condo properties, most of them being more on the loft conversion side, were selling in multiple offers and for much higher than I had anticipated. And low rise, as I mentioned, some of the open houses have had like 50 or 60 people at the open house on like a Saturday or Sunday. So like 100 people inclusive, let's say, over the weekends. And then over like the last 3 weeks, I'm just like, what is going on? Like, I feel like there's definitely been a shift, definitely a pullback from buyers, both low rise and condos, and things that I thought would just effortlessly sell, like not even worried about it, not losing sleep about it, not concerned about it, have been very quiet, like dead. And then things that I was like, oh gosh, this sort of category has been more challenged, or this location is more challenged, or this particular building has a little bit of a stigma to it, or whatever, those ones are selling at decent prices. So it's interesting this last week, and this is getting anecdotal here, and I'd love to hear what the team has to say. Our condos that we have listed have been doing better than our low-rise properties. And I don't know what that is about, people, but like something's going on.
Except for randomly, we have one low-rise house, which is at like Davisville area.
Oh, yeah.
That one's blowing up. It's like setting the world on fire.
I don't know
It's
what's
back
happening.
like 2022. And that was one that was a little bit of a shocker comparative to some of the other ones that we have that are struggling. I think all in all, we've got 8 properties currently on the market, and each one has its own little nuance.
Exactly.
Jess, Ian?
Yeah, I think to echo what Kori said, it is impossible to predict outcomes right now in a way that we've never quite seen before. I think there's always been a certain air of unpredictability, especially in the last couple of years. But as of today, toward the end of July of 2025, just in the last 3 weeks alone, I feel like I can draw a line in the sand very clearly of what the shift was right now and where we came from. And turnkey properties that are ideal for first-time buyers that are priced well, truly have no issues, are not moving. And it's difficult to say at this point whether this is a seasonal adjustment. Maybe people are just at the cottage, maybe they're on vacation, they're distracted by the summer, or if this is a sign of something larger to come. And I think because we're so early into observing these changes, there isn't enough quantifiable data to say where things are going. But it's definitely something to monitor quite closely. And who knows what will happen even in a week or two from now. And we've always said that the market shift very quickly. But even in the last week or so, we've noticed palpable change just with buyer sentiment alone. And I think that the negativity being propagated in the media is probably contributing to that as well. There does seem to be more fear than there ever has been before. And regardless of whether or not something is true, the perception of it does create reality for certain individuals. And what I am constantly reminding everyone is by the time you read about something, it's often too late. So try to get out there, make bold decisions, create your own reality, and base it off of facts that are coming from the experts and not one small piece of the story that is being sensationalized or blown out of proportion.
Mr. Busher.
Agreed. Seasonality, questionable. Is it summer? Is it not summer? Is it summer market? I think we need to get to September to find out what happened when we fell off that cliff a couple of weeks ago. I do feel like, speaking of factors outside of real estate, our spring was very wet and very cold for very long. So also we had holidays in a messed up pattern, a messed up schedule. Yeah. The spring market was like, when should we list? I think every agent was like, do we try to squeeze it in between March break-in, Easter, Passover? Do we is it then the May long weekend is right on the tail? Where do we go here? And it's, by the way, it's still like -8 and it's the May 2-4 weekend, the Victoria Day weekend. It was a zoo.
And do we list before the election or after the election?
Exactly. There were so many things for Torontonians and Canadians in the spring, including terrible weather, that I think our spring market got pushed into June, kind of got a bit of a lift from nice weather, obviously good listings out there. And there's still good listings now, but I am hearing from the listings that I have, I'm calling agents who have done 2 showings, and their agents are getting back to me to say, we're not actually done with your property yet. Like, we're not out. But they did the first showing, then they did the second showing before going away for a week to think about it. So they're like, when they get back, I'm going to connect with them and let you know whether or not there's still interest. So that's one kind of little bit of feedback I've heard more than once, that my people are away, but they're still really interested. So there's that. And then as far as putting out listings and being the seller, yeah, the big conversations are what's the pricing, what's the strategy? And part of that strategy is timing. Do we try to do this now? Do we throw our hat into the ring with everybody else, even if the pricing seems really easy to understand and comprehensive, even if we're not holding back offers and, people would be foolish to not take advantage of this? Is now the wrong time? And I repeat the sentiment, it's really, really hard to predict what's going to happen with anything, good, medium, bad properties. You just have to kind of trust a bit of instinct, because there is no quantifiable data that says this will work. I wonder, though, I was going to say this earlier, so I'll just tag it onto the end of this. If in 20 years' time, people will look back at 2022 to 2020, whenever this ends, let's call it 2026, optimistically, that 4-year window where people will say, you know what, I really wish my parents had bought property in 2025. I really wish my parents had, jumped on a house and gotten over whatever they were worried about in 2025. I'm putting it out there as a prediction that this might be a little window of time where people say, woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Or maybe, thank God they did.
Or thank God they did.
Who cares, because I'm living in my rental Brookfield prefab home provided by the government. So there's many different ways we could be looking at this from the future. Kori.
My other question for you guys, the team, is do you feel like some of this has to do with people's sentiment about Toronto as a city overall?
Great question.
That people are just like, do I want Toronto right now in its current state to be where I live and invest? And I question if people are like, I don't know if I believe in the future of the city right now, because we have so many things that need to be addressed that are not being addressed, like traffic or homelessness or tent encampments or crime. And and then also affordability. Like, it's not, it's so expensive to live here. I wonder sometimes if a lot of it has a lot to do with people's rationale being like, I just don't want to put my money, I'm not betting on Toronto right now, and I want to wait and see where Toronto is going. And that is something that I also can understand. I mean, like, I really feel like we need fresh leadership and a new vision for the city. Toronto's amazing. I've been so proud of living here for so many years, but we all have to agree, since COVID, the city has changed significantly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I do hear that quite a bit too. Cost of living, major factor.
Yeah.
I think for me, and I've talked about this, is my biggest concern is not the duress of sellers. Like, most of the sellers we're seeing in most instances don't have to sell. They like to sell, they like to transition, but they're not being forced to financially sell. But I think for me, the biggest thing that really kind of concerns me is the amount of people who are selling to leave the country. I would say 30 to 40% of our listings right now are people who are selling either because they've left and this is the last remaining assets they have, or because they are just leaving the country. Not Toronto, but the country. And I think this is the most concerning trend. And it really has changed dramatically since the recent election. I could think of at least 10 who are leaving or intending to leave or in process of selling everything and just leaving Canada. So I think that for me is like scarier than the market. It's scarier than anything. And it's something that people aren't really talking about, and it's not in the media. What are your thoughts on that, Cora?
Oh, I totally agree. I think this is a huge conversation, and you're seeing an exodus out of Vancouver, Calgary, and Toronto. And people are, whether they're moving to smaller, more affordable, and I'm putting air quotes around that for anyone who's listening on Spotify, if they're looking to live in sort of more smaller communities, or people are living or considering moving to the EU, which I find to be interesting, or the US. But I know a lot of people that are currently looking at their options in terms of their passports right now. And there's a lot of people I know that are like, oh, my parents are Irish, my parents are Italian, my parents are Greek. I can get a passport overseas. And they're starting to initiate the process so that they at least have the option to go somewhere else. And that is a conversation I've never had with one person ever until maybe like the last 6 to 12 months.
Jess?
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing the exact same thing. I was just having a conversation yesterday with somebody who was going through that process of trying to get their EU passport. They were in their mid-40s. Parents were born in Italy, and they just want the security of knowing that if they do have to make a significant life change, they can have a backup plan organized and ready to go. And it is alarming, and it's mostly alarming for me because the individuals that I'm seeing selling all of their Canadian assets and leaving the country are oftentimes high net worth clients. And I think that this is a market segment that we want to live in Canada and flourish in Canada and continue to contribute to our overall economy. And so if this is a trend that continues, it also frightens me. And it's a little bit disheartening because prior to COVID, the city was on such an upward trajectory and it felt like we were unstoppable and there was exponential room for growth. Then it's just like somebody took a bat and just crashed us down. And I'm still waiting for the recovery. And I don't think anyone anticipated that we would be in the existing climate as long as we have. I mean, most top economists in the world thought we would be in a 2-year blip. And now people are starting to backpedal and thinking, oh, this might be a little bit longer than that. But at the same time, I do still believe that long-term, Toronto in Canada is an amazing place to live and invest in. We just need to iron out a few tweaks, but I think the longevity is still there. And anybody that wants to be here long-term and wants to raise a family here, there is incredible opportunities to even enter into the marketplace right now. Whereas even 5-6 years ago, like that wasn't even an option for people based on the current rate of growth and appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody on this panel knows that even today, it's almost impossible to outsave the marketplace. So buyers have a real runway right now and real level of option and leverage that we've never seen before. But with that, of course, comes the trepidation and the second guessing, which is completely understandable as well.
Ian?
I've got a couple of people actually leaving here for Germany, need to sell. People have given up a search as buyers and changed their mind and decided that they wanted to move to the U.S. That was a little while ago, though. That was pre-second term of the current president. So I wonder if they're still doing that. I should reach out and find out what they're up to. No, I agree. As you guys were speaking about this too, I wonder how much of it is simply Southern Ontario based and how much of it is widespread across Canada. And I thought it would be a great idea for one of your podcasts to get a top agent from Vancouver and Calgary and other hot markets or once upon a time hot markets and just ask them, what is the mood among your people and what is the percentage of people selling to leave or buying to get into the country? What trends are you seeing across the whole nation instead of just where we are?
Yep.
But yeah, it's terrifying and frightening that to Jess's point, it feels like it's a lot of old school people that are leaving, not people who got here in the last 5 to 10 years and said, it's not for me. It's people who've had generations of family here that are like, okay, we're done.
I'm going to go live in Italy.
Yeah, we're looking at where we came from now and going back there.
I could only move to the Ukraine, which would not be very appealing right now.
No. There's been conversations within my own family too about, where would you go? Just fireside chat kind of stuff. But
yeah,
if you had to leave right now, would you pick another place in Canada? Would you go to rural Canada? Would you go to Calgary? Would you go to the East Coast? Where would you go? And I think a big part of it is most people say the first thing I would investigate is what is the economy doing where I'm going? Mm-hmm. The amount of assets that I would sell and the savings I've got and everything else, what does that turn into? What does that look like in the country I'm going to? So there's a lot of what ifs, but people, to your point, Jess, they're doing a lot of exploration into where could I, to both your points, where could I go and what does that look like?
It's not even exploration, like it's happening. We have
Right,
two
right.
Jewish clients don't feel safe in Canada anymore. They're leaving the US. We're selling both their properties in the fall. We have a client, good friend of mine, came here from Greece to get rid of austerity, went to a very big tech company, worked his way all the way up. He's going back to Greece because he thinks there's more opportunity there, selling everything. 3 properties will be listing for him in the fall. Like, this is happening across the board, and it's my biggest concern. And I know we're always trying to be balanced in terms of what we talk about, and it's something that I don't think is really being talked about enough. But if you're watching this, it's real and it's happening, and I hope it's just an emotional or visceral reaction, and eventually it starts to balance out, or we start to really take a harder look at ourselves here in our country. But it is a problem.
And then the last part of that is that some people are not thinking about this at all. Like,
Yeah.
it's very
100%.
interesting. Like, I
100%.
feel like everyone's thinking about it, like, because we're having these conversations. So I just make the assumption that everyone's like, what's my heritage? What other passport could I get? What is like my escape plan? And then 50% of the population is not thinking about this at all.
Yeah.
If not more. And
Yeah,
they're
it's
like,
higher than that.
How do
Well,
I get enough
higher,
rent
right.
for this month?
Yeah.
like
How
they're
do
not
I afford
thinking about-
groceries?
Yes. And they're thinking about, like, I'm imagining, what school my kid is going to go to high school at in 10 years once they're, they've gone through elementary school, and, where, we're looking at multi-generational family units that are bringing in their in-laws to like move into these larger properties. Like, there's a lot of people not thinking this way. And so it's hard because we have this insider information as to where people's headspaces are. And that it's hard not to make the assumption that everyone is not having that same conversation.
I'm going to combine 2 things. These are great points, everybody. But something Jess said and something Ralph said. Ralph, you mentioned the knee-jerk reaction. And Jess mentioned, 5 years ago, we were a hero and we seem to have gone to zero. So, are we blaming the economy and the politics of the world? Are we blaming Canada for generally just what are worldwide problems? Just like how when you're mad at yourself, you somehow blame your partner. It's like maybe it's not that Canada's so bad, but we're like, where is it good? And maybe the answer right now is definitely not Ukraine or, anywhere else that's war torn right now. But where should I go? Where is better economically, from a safety perspective, et cetera, et cetera? Will Toronto rebound and in 5 years' time go back to being a hero? Will this be a knee-jerk reaction? Look at what we all did during COVID. Money was cheap. We needed bigger houses. We needed recreation properties. We were never going to be able to travel again. And now you can't sell a recreation property. You've got a 5-bedroom house and all the kids have gone back to work and rented something. Will we come back to this conversation? And again, this is a team value of thinking long term. But in 5 years, will you regret moving to Italy, Germany? Will you be like, I should have just stayed in Canada? Things rebounded nicely. It was really hard to see the future, and I don't have a crystal ball. None of us do.
True.
But there's definitely that possibility that conversations we had in the spring of 2020 probably sound pretty strange in the summer of 2025 if we went back and watched the tapes. So if somebody comes around and watches this in 2032, they'll be like, wow, look at the fear and uncertainty and confusion in the faces of these 4 agents, right?
And facial hair.
And facial hair, yeah.
Oh my God.
And how young they were, and before they all, real estate beat them down until about 2030 when it rebounded, and now everybody's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and there's 20 offers on every property again.
So true. That's a really good point.
That's a really good point. And I think if you even look back to that trend where everyone was leaving Toronto to move to Hamilton because it was Toronto's Brooklyn, like, they're all moving back if they can get out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a good example.
My partner has an office job, and she's battling with a team where they live in Brantford, Peterborough, Coburg, because once upon a time they could do that. It was 5 days a week, and now they need to start coming back to the office, and people are just threatening to quit rather than move. So again, another knee-jerk reaction. If I can work from anywhere, I'm going to move to the Bahamas and keep my office job in Toronto. And it's just not possible anymore. So who knows where this will go?
So true.
And that's another trend that I think is worth discussion, maybe not today or another podcast, is with all of the offices now requiring their employees to work from the office, do you think that that is part of the contributing factor as to why we're seeing condos now slowly start to move again when we're talking about our own listings?
Great point.
Because
Good
these
point.
are conversations that I'm having a lot with individuals, especially those that moved abroad or outside the GTA rather, thinking that their remote job would be permanent. And they're really having to rethink their lifestyle choices, either where they live or where they work. And I think that's also impacting their real estate decisions.
Yeah, it's a great point.
I think it's great that people have to go back to the office to work. There's just way more productivity that way. I think they just came out, and I don't know the exact stat. So if you're watching this and you know that one of the biggest users of Terranet, is it Terranite or terabytes of Netflix are government workers watching Netflix in the Defense Department. And so they had to ban Netflix. Because I'm sure people are working from home, but they're like side hustling, watching Netflix at the same time. And I know a lot of people.
Educational.
Yeah. So I think working in the office is really good. I'm personally a fan. It's way better for productivity.
Kori, brace yourself for a lot of hate mail in the chat.
You think so?
I know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, there's a lot of office workers who are going to be like, you know what, lady, listen, I get so much more done. I work the 2 hours I would have been on the subway. Like there's a lot of venom around that.
I think both points are valid, but I think the biggest benefit of working in the office is the collaborative effect, exchanging ideas with other team members and being able to work together. And I think that when people are used to working alone in their office, which is something that all of us on this panel can relate to, you become a little bit more reclusive. And I just think as a society, there's a lot of benefits to working in a team environment and working with other individuals and having debates and having conversations with people that have different perspectives. Yeah. And competition. Yes.
I think it's healthy.
Okay. Fox Marin, this is another podcast idea for you. A panel of people who are pro go back to the office and people who are not.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Noted. Just one thing as we transition, because we're talking about the biggest downloaders of Netflix, just a little side thing. I follow this account on X, and basically it monitors the activity for pizza orders at the Pentagon, and it's the Domino's right by the Pentagon. And generally when it goes up late at night, that's when the U.S. is bombing somewhere in the world. So it's a really good account to follow if you want to know what's happening before it happens.
If Domino's gets busy, brace yourself. Could be you.
Exactly. Okay, so let's just talk about our favorite topic and the favorite topic in the comments section. Agents. I know in this environment, as challenging as it's been, our value is more important than ever, and we have been busier than ever as people generally who are looking to make real estate related decisions are moving towards professionals. And I think the really strong agents who add the most value have been thriving in this environment. Kori, what are you seeing along the topic of agents and how they're navigating this, being the middle person in this world?
100%. I can talk to this all day long. I think one thing that I've said, and Ralph, I know we've had offline conversations about this, is despite everything being far more challenging and the relationship with our client is difficult to navigate because we don't actually know the outcome of what's going to happen. So completely acknowledging the uncertainty and everything that we've just discussed. The one thing that I can appreciate about being a broker in this environment is that it's made me a lot better at what I do.
Yes.
And so much more fearless of difficult conversations and my ability to communicate as transparently as needed to see that client successful. I have a willingness that I've never had before to just give everyone the straight goods, like you're overpriced, or we need to do this, or I need to do this, or a willingness on my behalf to get up at 4:00 in the morning and make sure that all the lights are turned on before that second showing to make sure that we could see that second showing possibly translate to an offer. Like just the over and aboveness required in the thinking through things, I feel like has made me so much better and more multifaceted and strategic and I'm providing so much better quality service that I think even if the market rebounds in the next couple of years, I'll always bring that with me. And I think that's a really good thing on the agent side.
It's been great training for us all, 100%
Yeah.
on all those points. Yeah.
Yes.
Just even say that you were practicing agent both in an absolutely highest competitive market and then on the total opposite end of the spectrum shows a layer of versatility that a lot of agents newer agents in the future may not have. And it's given myself additional foresight to rethink decisions in a way that I think didn't seem as real before when the markets were on an upward trajectory for the last 2 decades. There was not a lot of fear of what happens if things change. I think everybody just assumed that you couldn't lose. And I do think that long term, those benefits are still there. But right now we're thinking about our downside and our clients' downside 100 different ways. And I think that's what makes a great real estate partner. And the other thing that I've noticed just from the agent perspective is the quality of, and this is something we've talked about many times before, but the quality of agents that are practicing right now has increased substantially. And there's very much a dichotomy of agent performance where you will talk to 10 agents. Most of them will say they're really struggling right now. They're having one of their worst years. And then some of them are saying, we're actually doing really well. We're burnt out to the max, but we're doing more business than we have before. And the driving factor of that is buyers and sellers are taking more time to think about who they're willing to partner with. We're seeing more clients go through the process of interviewing agents and not just working with their friend or their family member because of the relationship. They're truly in pursuit of who they feel will really have their best interest at heart, will really advocate for them, and will have the skills and experience necessary to make whatever their endeavor is, whether it's to buy or sell, the most successful, because people really understand how challenging the market is in a way that didn't really happen before.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ian?
I will just piggyback on what Jess was saying there too, that when you're setting up a buyer client for a Saturday or a Sunday, half a dozen showings, it's interesting how you go through and you're like, oh, this is so-and-so's listing. This is so-and-so's listing. They're all recognizable names. They're all people that you've done deals with before. Most of them are a pleasure to work with. And that's really refreshing. And I think that's a sign of there's not a single newbie in this list, right? There's not a single name from out of town that I don't recognize. Somebody practicing from a suburban brokerage or something that we've never heard of before. So that's really nice. And you can also speak to clients to say, listen, if this is a property you're interested in, we have a longstanding relationship with this agent. They are experienced. We can, we're going to do our own due diligence, but there's a lot about this property I already like because it's in great hands.
Yes.
So I think to a certain degree, the agent base out there is basically contracting. It's controlling itself almost, and it's contracting because it's squeezing out people who don't have that experience or have been around maybe for a little while, but really did not know what they were doing and are really struggling now. I had another point, but I've forgotten it now. It was, no, come back to me. Sorry.
No problem.
It happens.
Cora, anything else you'd like to add to this?
No, I think I already made my points about this. I think it's a really good time for agents to up their game. And it's been really wonderful working with more tenured agents, quality agents. I mean, we just did a deal last night with an agent that we've known for years. And I was like, it could not have been easier. I was like, as soon as I saw her name, I was like, she's going to get it. And she did. And the communication was exceptional. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, I love this person. This just made it so much easier. So I think that's a good thing. Let's keep up the adding value. And I know both buyers and sellers alike need that right now more than ever.
Does anybody here know how frequently they check how many licensed agents there are? Like, is that
we have the ability to check that on our secondary software that we have.
Yep.
It was up to 72,000. I have no idea where it is today, which is just ridiculous and unnecessary, knowing 50% don't even transact, and then 25% of that 50% do 1 to 5 transactions. Like it's the Pareto principle on crack. And I think we're seeing that, as with any market, when you see a downturn, it's a real opportunity for the strong to continue to grow. And it's something that we're really thinking about and focused on here at Fox Marin. So without further ado, I'm going to wrap up this conversation, the end of FOMO in this new era of fatigue. And a lot of us on this call, while having a great year, are somewhat exhausted, but we are looking forward to a long weekend next weekend over the summer to get a little downtime. So Jess, Ian, Kori, thank you so much for being involved today and joining us on
Thanks for having
this
us.
discussion. Hopefully we add some value to anybody who made it to the end, which is always a great thing at Fox Marin on our podcast. I was remiss, and I do not want to be remiss, to ask everybody to hit that like or subscribe button. And if you have any comments, please be sure to hit that like button down below and comment down below as well.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for joining.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.